Tally-ho everybody, this is A Heap of Games, Adam speaking, and I'm going to do something a bit different. I'm going to do one of these tier lists. Now, Jimmy Eat World is a band that I grew up with. I started listening to them back in about 2003, 2004, so it's been well over a decade now. I was around the time the fourth album came out when I started listening to them, and it all started when I saw The Middle on Kerrang. That was back in the day. But I've enjoyed this band ever since. Gone on and off at different times. I'll probably explain it as I go through this. But I'm still listening to them now quite a lot. And I just wanted to do this tier list and to, you know, show other Jimmy Eat World fans what I think of the Jimmy Eat World discography. I haven't really changed this tier list much, so we've got meh at the bottom, okay, good tier, great tier. I've changed the top one to masterpiece, and there's only one item on this list that will end up in there. If you've watched my channel at all before regarding Jimmy Eat World, you know which one. But if you don't know yet, and this is your first time to my channel, then, you know, you may be in for a surprise. So, let's start this. We'll go from left to right. We're not going to pick and choose, so the first one is going to be the Jimmy Eat World EP from 1998. Ooh, and by the way, this is all relative, so if I put something in the bottom one, meh, it means relative to the other albums. Things may chop and change as we go through this, but let's look at this one for now. So, EPs, I'm not quite sure why they're here. Jimmy Eat World EP, so you've got Lucky Denver Mint, For Me This Is Heaven, Roller Queen, Softer, and Your New Aesthetic Demo. Now, Lucky Denver Mint and For Me This Is Heaven are the same as they are in the album, so it comes down to the other three tracks. The Your New Aesthetic Demo is interesting. It's alright, it's pretty good. It's not something I ever really go back to. Roller Queen it's really good, but I have to be in the mood for it. Softer is sort of in between those two, so I think it's in the right place in good tier. There's no real standout like, oh god, I love that track, but there's no track where I scoff at and say, oh, that's trash. And I think it averages out to an average, funnily enough, Jimmy Eat World item in the discography. I will say as well that they haven't included the singles disc here, which is from the year 2000, which I would put probably in great tier, because that was an awesome compilation. So, the singles thing, let's pretend this is singles, goes there. It's not singles, so I'm going to take it back out. Bleed American. This is the first album I got of Jimmy Eat World. I listened to The Middle first. I started to listen to this album, and I really got into it. I thought it was a great album. My favourite songs were probably, I think Sweetness was the best one. The Authority song was great. The Middle was obviously the one that I first started listening to. The Middle's alright. For a pop song, a Jimmy Eat World pop song, yeah, it's among one of the better ones. But overall, The Middle isn't among Jimmy Eat World's best overall. What other songs you got on there? Salt, Sweat, Sugar, which is banging tune. I believe it was written in the mid-90s, around sometime after Static Prevails, which makes it quite an early song that just ended up on a later album. Which probably explains why it sounds the way it does. Caution is a good song. Apart from that, though, it's a bit tepid at times. I never got into Get It Faster. Hear You, Me and My Sundown, I've played before. When I've done open mics, I've played those songs live, but I wouldn't go back to them and say, oh, I really want to listen to that song. Your House, skippable, really. I think this is I think it is a good tier. It's a good tier album. It's got some absolute bangers, but at the same time, it doesn't impress that much. Right, Chase This Light. The first album I actually got to hype about, because, as I said, I got into Jimmy Eat World just as Futures was coming out, so I didn't get that hype. Chase This Light was the first album I was able to get into the hype for, and I got all the demos and listened to that, and I was really up for it. But the result was quite disappointing. Now, Jimmy Eat World, from Bleed American through to Futures, had become quite a poppy band. But Chase This Light took it to the next level. It's so clean and so polished that at times it's almost unbearable. It's too clean. It's the opposite of Static Prevails, which is the next one we're going to see. And it doesn't feel real at times. It just feels like a computer automated production. But there are some good tracks on it. I think Electable's a fun little number. Big Casino's a good song, the first track on the album. And Dizzy, I Can Be in the Mood For. But the rest of it is just, you take it or leave it. It's, if those tracks didn't exist, I wouldn't be sad, really. There might be a couple in there that, I mean, Carry You is alright. But yeah, it's okay. It's okay. There are a few good, there's 2 or 3 good songs, and the rest, if they didn't exist anymore, I'm not going to lose any sleep. Right, masterpiece, Static Prevails. Absolute masterpiece. The greatest Jimmy Eat World album, bar none. There's no... If you go on the Jimmy Eat World Facebook page or the Reddit, for example, this album tends to rank near the bottom, but there's, I'd say 20% of the fans will have Static Prevails in the top 3, and the other 80% it will be at the bottom. It's not in the middle. You've got 2 groups of Jimmy Eat World fans. You've got the old school Jimmy Eat World fans who love Static Prevails, and then you've got the pop Jimmy Eat World fans who don't really care for Static Prevails. And I think it's very rare that you find somebody who just thinks, yeah, it's an average Jimmy Eat World album. I think there's not many people that think that. It's quite divisive in that way, but you do listen to Static Prevails, and it is a much different album to what came after Clarity. Because Clarity is Static Prevails trying to get into the charts. It's Static Prevails with a few more little added instrumentation thrown in, and the pop numbers are poppier. But Static Prevails is awesome, and the run from Digits, Caveman, World of Static in the same room is just perfection. It is gorgeous, and I love it. And as opposed to Chase This Light, which a lot of times feels like it's been made by a computer, if you listen to Static Prevails, you still get all the little errors in there when they're playing. Like sometimes they'll go slightly out of time or what have you. And it doesn't get to the point where it's bad, where they're messing up a lot. But there's just these little bits in there that remind you that this is a band playing. And a lot of times it does sound like they've walked into a studio, played the song and left. And just left the producer to do his magic. And there's something beautiful about that. It's raw, and it shows the band were performing well together. It's brilliant. It is the Jimmy Eat World masterpiece, in my opinion. It is fantastic. And it's probably, if not the... It's one of, if not the, favourite albums in my collection. It is... I want them to do... Because they've done the Phoenix sessions. They've done Clarity, Futures, and Surviving. I want them to do a Static Prevails one. I would die happy. Clarity. I mentioned, it's very much like Static Prevails, except it's a bit poppier. It's very much the same sound, but they've added things like glockenspiels and electronic stuff like keyboards and more strings. There are strings in Static Prevails, but Clarity just decided, right, we're just going to throw as many instruments into Static Prevails as we can and see what comes out the other end. And also Jim Adkins, he changed his vocal style a bit. I mean, perhaps it might have been because he wanted his voice to last longer, because a lot of singers will sing a certain way and their voice will be shot by the time they're 40. Look at Fish from Marillion. He had a particular vocal style. He did a lot of graty stuff and gravelly stuff, and by the time he was 50, his voice had gone. Maybe it was that. Maybe Jim Adkins just thought, I'm just going to tone it down a bit. One of the big differences from this one is obviously Tom Linton didn't take on the vocal duties as much as he had previously, which is a shame because, I mean, he's not technically a great singer, Tom Linton. I don't think anybody's going to turn around and say he's Pavarotti. He's not technically a gifted singer, but there's just something about his singing which is just so charming, and I love it. And I love every time Tom sings, even though he's not technically that gifted. I love it. There's just something about it. Where does Clarity rank among these? It's better than Bleed American and the Jimmy Eat World EP. It's nowhere near Static Prevails, but I think compared to other albums, it is great. Goodbye Sky Harbor, Crush, Believe in What You Want, Table for Glasses, Blister, Just Watch the Fireworks. I mean, 6, that's near enough half the tracks that I'd say are great Jimmy Eat World songs. And there aren't any bad ones. There aren't any bad ones, as opposed to Chaser's Light, for example. Here It Goes, I'd call it a bad Jimmy Eat World song. Clarity is a great Jimmy Eat World album, and that's where it's going on my list. Next up, Futures. Regarded as probably the most popular Jimmy Eat World album amongst the fans, I'm not quite so keen. I do believe Futures is overrated. I don't know, it just seems... It is a bit dull at times. It can be a bit dull. There are some good songs in it. 23 is a good song. It's not the best. I think, again, that one's overrated. Night Drive, When I'm in the Mood, is a very good song. The title track, Futures, good song. Apart from that, I quite like The World You Love. But I get to that stage and I'm like, oh, the rest, you know, I can do without, really. They're all right. There are songs in there that I don't particularly like, and I'm going against the grain in saying Work and Pain. I just can't deal with it. There's a drum sound in Pain in the verses that it grinds on my eardrums. It's chalkboard shit. And it just puts me right off the song. And Work is just dull. It's just dull. And unfortunately, it's a dull song that they've tried to recreate on every album since, essentially. But there are good songs on it. It's not as bad as Chase This Light, so I'm going to leave it in the good tier. Now, Damage. This came out at a time when I'd fallen out of Jimmy Eat World. And I can't explain why. I'll explain why once I've done the Invented one. But after Invented came out and they started releasing the tracks for Damage, I think it was Appreciation or I Will Steal You Back. I listened to it and I thought, I've heard this before. I've heard this Jimmy Eat World song. It's just been repackaged. And I still think that way about that song. It is just Jimmy Eat World by the numbers. And I think a lot of Damage is. But not only that, but it's quite monotonous as well. Look at something like Static Prevails, the diversity in sound, the dynamicism. Where it's ear pounding 1 minute, next minute you can barely hear anything. It's dynamic. Damage is just one long stream of drone. I don't really like it that much, and I don't go back to it. I've hardly ever listened to it. I mean, I'll say to myself, I like Lean, and then I'll listen to it and I think, I'll put another song on now. What's the one that was, I think there's one, Damage, I think, the title track, where they took the Go Big Casino song Ready and made it a bit worse and just added more instruments to it. It's still a pleasant listen, but apart from that, I won't pick up this album. I just won't do it. Yeah, it's in the meh column. We're getting a pretty even split here across the albums. Right, Invented. This one defined my first year at university. It was my 2010, 2011 album, so bridging those 2 years. And I loved it when it came out. I loved Invented. Highlights were... I mean, there weren't that many songs that weren't. The start of the album and the end of the album, so the 2 ending tracks. The Tom Linton led track for the first time in many years. And then the first 4 or 5, I really got into. I really liked them. But then you got into the middle of the album. And you got songs like Cut, in which Jim Adkins' vocals literally cut a hole in my eardrums and bring me to unpleasant tears. I don't know what he's doing with his vocals in that song, but it's awful. He's a great singer, Jim Adkins, but on that particular song, it's just like, what's he doing? And I can't stand that song. I can't listen to it. and Stop, which is take Drugs on Me and Work and just cram them together and you've got Stop. Literally, there is, if you actually went to a computer program and you were somehow able to combine those two tracks, you would have Stop with just different lyrics. There's even the vocal melody is almost exact, and it's just bad. It's Jimmy Eat World by the numbers. So yeah, it's a good album. It's got some great tracks. Mixtape, Invented. I liked Evidence a lot when I first heard it. They're great tracks, but the middle of the album is just a mess, really. But I'd rate it above. I would rate it above Futures, but not quite Clarity. It's somewhere in between there. But I'm going to keep it in good tier for now. If it weren't for Stop and Cut, it would be up here. But for now, it's there. Jimmy Eat World, the 1994 self-titled album. I've got a copy of this. There aren't that many around. This is a very interesting album because I've talked about the lack of dynamics in Damage. And this album suffers from the same problem. It's all very hard and heavy, but it's a very short album, very short and sweet. But I much prefer the monotonous drive and energy of the 1994 self-titled to the whining drab monotony that is Damage. And Jimmy Eat World, the self-titled album, has some awesome tunes on it. Reason 346, Usury, Chachi, Patches. What else is there on that? Those are the best ones. So you've got 5, I think I counted 5 there. 5 songs there that are absolute bangers, absolute great songs. There are some songs in there that I don't like as much, like Scientific and Crooked, I think are a bit bland at times. And Cars, which is, just, I think, a lesser version of Look at You, which is on the first EP, which isn't on this list, actually. Amphibious is a little bit throwaway, but it's somewhere between great and good tier. But I will say that there are some of the songs on here, Reason 346 and Usury specifically, just edge this to great tier, because they are phenomenal tracks. And it's a shame that Jimmy Eat World have near enough disowned this album. They haven't really now, because they did for about 10 years, where they would say that their first album was Static Prevails, but they acknowledged that this is chapter 1 in their Phoenix sessions, and they actually played Patches live in 2012, and it's on YouTube, and it was a really good fun. I was really excited to see that, because it's a great song, and it was great to see one of these tracks live, because people weren't recording Jimmy Eat World shows back when these songs were about, so there's not very much evidence of it, but I think it is a great album. Stay on My Side Tonight EP. Now, this is 5 tracks, and it's got some bangers on it. Disintegration, Over and Closer are pretty awesome tunes. The first 2, Disintegration and Closer, are awesome tunes. I really like them. Over, it's a shame about Over, because it was a Clarity demo, and I thought the demo version, even though it was very hard to hear what was going on in that song at times because the audio quality is so poor, you can just tell that it's a much superior version to this one. You had Linton singing the verses, and from what we can tell, again, the audio quality isn't great, it sounds like Jim Adkins in the choruses, and at least the bridge. But that was an awesome tune that they've downgraded for this album, so that's a bit of a shame. The last 2 tracks, Half Right, Throwaway, and Drugs on Me Styrofoam Remix, I'd barely even count it as an item on the album. It's just so, it's last on the thing, and I never get to it. It doesn't really exist, as far as I'm concerned. Now, if we were to get rid of those 2 last tracks, it would most definitely be in great tier. And I'm tempted to keep it there, because the Styrofoam remixes aren't really album tracks, really, are they? So I am going to put it in great tier. I'm going to put it in great tier, because I'm going to discount the Styrofoam remix as just a remix jammed onto the end of the album. And then the only thing really holding it, that would possibly hold it down from great tier, is Half Right, which on its own is actually, it's not bad, but it's just a bit forgettable. So that's going in great tier. Integrity Blues. Now there's a funny little album. The production is wonderful, but once again, it's too clean. Jimmy Eat World have not, ever since Bleed American, they've been too clean. They've not been raw. It's all been so produced, and that's where clarity and static prevails, where I think they excelled. It's just put the band in the studio, let them play and let them leave, and just let the producer mess around with what they get given. The rest of them, it's too well produced. This album, Integrity Blues, I think it's pretty awesome. You've got some great tracks on there. Granted, it can be a bit poppy at times, but I got over that quite quickly. Sure and Certain, at first I thought, nah, it's pop, it's Chase This Light, standard pop, but it grew on me over time, unlike most of Chase This Light. Paul Roger and Integrity Blues, to finish off the album, are good little tracks. I like them. The best song on this album is Through and Through. It's an awesome track. I love that track, Through. The other songs on there, Pass the Baby, Pretty Grids, they're above average Jimmy Eat World. They're above average. And there aren't any songs on this that I would actually say are bad Jimmy Eat World songs. I think it's a pretty consistent album. I'm trying to remember the other tracks off the top of my head. I don't know, but I'm going to put, it's either good or great. I'd say it's better than Invented, which I thought I'd put there, so I've got to put it in great tier. And then the last one. Now, actually, I think this was made, it must have been made before Surviving came out. So I'm actually going to turn this little EP into Surviving. So this thing here, turn it orange, it's Surviving. If it were the EP, I haven't actually sat down and just listened to this EP on its own, so I don't really know anyway. By this point, once again, I was sort of falling out of Jimmy Eat World, which is weird, really, because I liked Invented Integrity Blues, but after those albums came out, I just thought I'd heard Jimmy Eat World, I'd heard what they produced, and the first songs came off of Surviving. I thought, I've heard it all before. And then at some point, I saw the video for 555, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting little ditty. And so turns out I really like that song. I don't usually like that sort of song, but I've come to the conclusion that 555 is Jimmy Eat World's Vienna. So if ever you've heard the song Vienna by Ultravox, it sounds like Jimmy Eat World's Vienna. And I love it. I think it's a great song. The title track, Surviving, again, awesome track. Congratulations is a pretty good closer. Pretty good. What else have you got on there? Criminal Energy. It's fine. It's nice and you can sing along to it. And Recommit is a great song. I really like that. It's like they tried something a bit different, which doesn't happen often, unfortunately, with modern day Jimmy Eat World. It does often come across as by the numbers at times, but granted, on this album at times that they did experiment, and it was pleasant. This album's a bit like Invented, though, where you get to the middle of the album and there's just a couple of stinkers. And this album is no exception. All the Way Stay, which is the main single, which I think is the one that turned me off originally buying this album, and then 555 came out. So the main single, All the Way Stay, it's catchy, but it is the Millennial Whoop song. You might have heard of what the Millennial Whoop is. It's wah-oo, wah-oo. It's the third and the fifth of the scale. Oh, oh. And it's a producer's trick. It quite literally is a cheat. You see videos of it on YouTube talking about the Millennial Whoop, and if you go through all like the chart toppers well, not all obviously, but a large number of the chart toppers of the past few decades, they always manage to sneak in this little whoa, whoa. It's called the Millennial Whoop, and it's an actual thing. And this song, of course, has the whoa, whoa. And every time I hear the Millennial Whoop now, I just instantly turn off. It's like, okay, so they're cheating. They've put a main single out there, and just to make it so that it sticks in people's head, they'll put that little whoa, whoa. And yeah, it turns me off of that song. And Diamond is, again, it's Jimmy World by the numbers. I think it's pretty bland and nothing special. I think the bridge is pretty dire as well. And the worst lyric on the album, in fact, one of the worst Jimmy World lyrics of all time, I think. I can see it with my eyes. The phrase is I can see it with my own eyes, because then you're distinguishing from your eyes from other people's. When you're just saying, I can see it with my eyes, it's like, well, yeah, what else are you going to see with? Your mouth? Your ears? You're going to see with your ears? I don't know, it's one of those nitpicky things that every time I hear it, I just think, ugh, that's crap. And nothing about that song stands out. It's dull as dishwater. So where am I going to put Surviving, or this standing for Surviving? Oh, where have I put it there? I don't want to put it in OK. It's better than OK. It's better than that. And I think it's level with Integrity Blues. I have these two in my car, and I play them equally as much. So I think that's my tier list. And it's skewed towards the great tier, which is good to know. Mostly, you've got these three, the first three albums. Oh, these three are the best. So if I were to eliminate three from the great tier, it would be those three. Of course, I won't do that. I'm just trying to make the example that these three, the first three Jimmy World albums, are the best. The originals are always the best. But those three belong in there. Damage, you know, if it disappeared tomorrow, I ain't losing sleep. Chase is like, if that one disappeared, I'd be like, well, I miss Big Casino now. I liked that song, so that one goes on OK. And the others, I think, are very high quality entries into the Jimmy World discography. Masterpiece, Static Prevails. You will not beat that. And if you disagree with that, I will come round your house and I'll show you a bit of rough and tumble, right? So you better be careful. I'm hard and dangerous. Joshing you. But that's my tier list, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and go do this yourself and tell me what you think of my little list. Thank you for watching. Gerard Toodlepip Toodaloo, and cheerio. See you later.